Wednesday call, the fact that everyone's on the call means that everyone got home safely last week, even if there were some bumps in the road. Weather on the East Coast certainly hasn't been cooperating with air travel lately. We've had a lot of storms over the last couple of days, but I'm glad everyone's here. It's early morning on the East Coast. We're having our coffees here. You may be having coffees or something else wherever you are to keep yourself awake during the day. It's a momentous day for us at the IAASB. The goal of this session is to approve our exposure draft, ISSA 5000, and then the hard work really gets started. But sometimes we're stepping back and recognizing where this is contextually, how important the approval of this proposal is. Just this week, I and many others have been participated in launch events for the IAASB's S1 and S2, and reflecting on how much is happening in this ecosystem at the IAASB, at GRI, in Europe, and in other jurisdictions. I know Australia just put out a note this week for the Treasury referring to our work as well. So, a lot is happening and momentum is building, and it is really important, our approval of this ED at this time, to get public input on all the hard work that the task force, the staff, and the board has done on this project. So I'm really excited about today's meeting. Welcome to all our observers and all those who are following us on YouTube. Again, I think there's a couple, we said some farewells for this meeting, but this will be their last official session. Joining us, the TAs and Adriana at the session as well. I should say as well that we should note that it will be, sadly, probably, I don't know if Amy's on the call as well too, but Amy's last call with this board as well, and we could talk about that a little bit later too. But she's been such a huge help to us at the board and a driver force for the LCE and many other projects, technology and others. So a lot to do today. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Josephine right now and have her walk through some of the relatively minor amendments that have been done since our last session on Friday.
Okay, if you would just bear with me 1 second. I seem to have lost my entire Zoom screen here. I just want to make sure I get that back. Thank you.
And I should have noted it won't be Amy's last call too, but she will be with us for July, because of course we're talking about LCE, and she's not going so soon.
Okay, fine. I'm in good shape. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. And hello, everyone. First, I do need to thank the task force and staff for their help on fine-tuning this for the turnaround on Monday, working through the weekend as well. As Tom says, I'm going to just walk through the standard and invite comments as indicated in the email that you received on Monday. We do only have a few minor amendments we want to raise or bring to your attention, where potentially our over enthusiasm to address one comment then upsets many others along the way. So we've got one or two of those, and then we do have a cross-reference change that we do want to mention. It's not quite that straightforward, so we will raise that point, but we'll talk about that when we get to those particular sections. But as always with me, it's rolling up those sleeves straight away. And the first section, if we could go to the next slide, please, is the next, please, Michelle, is the introduction, effective dates and objectives, as you can see on the slide. So we're talking through 1 to 16 in the requirements, and A1 to A32A in the application material, and of course, if you do have anything on Appendix 1. So Tom, back to you, please.
Josephine, you always take so long with your introduction. So anyone on paragraphs 1 through 16? Julie?
Thanks, Tom. And thanks, Josephine, and your task force. I can imagine how much work you've done over the last few days since we last saw each other. My comment is on paragraph A1, and it's A1 really, and paragraph 6, and there's a conforming amendment also that gets wrapped into my comment in 3410. And I apologize that I'm bringing this up now, but I think it only became clear to me once I saw the redrafting in the turnaround, what we were intending to do with those engagements that are the practitioners providing assurance on a GHG statement, and at which point you use 3410 and which point you use 5,000. So what I'm concerned about is that the way we've drafted A1 now, the only time that a practitioner uses 3410 is when they're engaged to perform a separate conclusion on a GHG statement. But a GHG statement could be presented with overall sustainability information in a package. Like an entity could report on a GHG statement and other sustainability information together. And I think the way I read the way we've drafted it now is then the practitioner would be an ISSA 5000 because they haven't been separately engaged to report. And I think that would result in inconsistency in providing assurance on GHG statements. And I'm being clear by saying statements because I know there's a difference between statements and information. So I'm only talking about statements now. And that inconsistency really only arises because of the way the practitioner is engaged, which didn't feel quite right for me. So for example, on one hand, a practitioner is engaged by a company to report on a GHG statement on its own. So they use 3410 and 3000. And in another case, there's a GHG statement presented with other information, let's say a GRI statement in a combined package, and they're using 5,000. And I think that doesn't sit quite right for me, that they would be using two different standards to report on that GHG statement. So, and the reason why is there's differences between what we've brought over from 3410 to 5,000. So in some cases, you'd be performing slightly different work in, let's say, a limited assurance under 3410 versus 5,000 for a GHG statement. So I know it was really late and we sent in some proposed changes, but I wonder if, well, I guess my first question is, was that the intention? Am I reading it right? And then if I am, then I still have this challenge about the fact that you would have an inconsistency in performing GHG assurance over GHG statements between the two. And it really would limit the use of 3410 to, I think, like a smaller population of assurance engagements. So I'll pause there because that was a lot.
Hi, Julie. I have to say that this is a topic we had a lot of discussion on a few months ago, and I think we also had a discussion about this in the lead up to the revision of the note, which I think I was the one who suggested this change from what we had last week. So I think I could, normally I would wait to the round of top comments on this point came in and then respond. We know the reality is, or at least I knew the reality is what you said. This was the case when Wolf raised the issue, I believe, was it in the last September board meeting? And, that was the premise of Wolf's argument, but yeah, I think we became comfortable with the board that there could be a difference here. The real reality is that the public interest also demands some clarity on this in implementing our standard. I think the public interest demands that the standard is a standalone standard. And I think the practicality is that most engagements are going to be jumping in the mandatory world from 0 to full requirements on full ESG topics. And I really worry about being in both fences unless there's a separate 3410 engagement. So explicitly, we knew this was the case. I am certain it will generate comment But the practicalities are probably that also firms are unlikely to change the methodologies for the limited assurance engagement as well. But others could do it. But I'm really concerned that we will add confusion in the marketplace, violate our clarity objectives in the PIF, violate our enforceability objectives in the PIF. The solution to it, in my mind, is bringing elements of 3410 into the 5000 series rather than to be in both. So, I personally think it's in a better place to be the way this task force has articulated in 1A, then add this potential real grayness to it. And I don't believe that people will be just adding one or two topics on top of GHG, but will be adding a plethora of ESG related reporting issues as well. So, I'm comfortable with where we stand. I knew exactly what the realities are, but I also know that we're going to generate a host of comments on it. I don't know if the Josephine has a reaction to that, and Julie, I certainly would welcome yours and others' reaction to mine. So, I don't think there's a perfect solution to it, but I think our solution on balance is better than sort of the grayness and the complexity that we would add otherwise. Josephine?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Yeah, thank you very much. And that's spot on. And that's where we came to after the discussion on Friday. And to your point, this is obviously an incredibly important issue, and it will be not only explained in the EM, but we will obviously consider specific questions about it as well. So we get that feedback from our stakeholders. Thank you.
Myself, Julie.
Yeah, Tom, I hear you. I respectfully, I'm not sure it was as clear before that this was going to only be limited to when a practitioner is engaged separately to report on a GHG statement. So if I missed that, I'm sorry, but that wasn't as clear to me. I think the solution is when you're performing assurance on a GHG statement, you use 3410. And it can be in a combined report, but you at least perform the work over that GHG statement from an assurance perspective under 3410. And I've actually seen combined reports where that's the case now. So anyway, just to say, I'm still unsure about the very limited scope that we now have for 3410. So.
Neil?
Thanks, Tom. I just wanted to clarify one word, Julie, that you're using, and it's the order of the word where you're saying you've been engaged separately. As I read it, it's not about being engaged separately, but you've been engaged to provide a separate conclusion. And so there would be cases where you've been engaged over specific indicators, one of which may be the GHG statement, in which case 3410 would still apply. And so your example of A versus B that you provided to the task team, I don't believe results in inconsistent application, because if part of that engagement, you need to provide a separate conclusion as part of your assurance, you would need to use 3410 in those examples. So I think just see the difference between being engaged separately and being engaged to provide a separate conclusion on the GHG statement.
Josephine?
Thank you. Julie, and then also to Neil's point, in fact, maybe the issue is this engaged, because ultimately what we're talking about is providing a separate conclusion on a greenhouse gas statement. And then in which case we could actually, that would be a fairly easy fix at this stage, that we would say when the practitioner is providing a separate conclusion on a greenhouse gas statement, then in which case 3410 applies. And then it doesn't matter if you're engaged to do 3410 and 5000 or engaged just to do it. The point is the conclusion.
So could you repeat that language again? I think it just so everyone slowly, so Julie could and we all could understand what
Yeah.
what A would now say.
Tom, I'm
So-
happy also to share my screen if that helps for those words, if you want to read
Okay.
them. Would that
All
help?
right, Claire. Yeah, sure.
Just one moment. I hope this will work on top of the slide sharing.
But if not, I can just read it out. We're all
Oh,
friends.
sorry. Yeah,
And you
okay.
can-
Well,
why
maybe
don't you
read
put
out.
it- why don't you put it in the chat function, even though
Oh,
people
perfect.
can't see, and then we'll
Yeah,
read it out.
because
So
they
it's
have-
on the public record, so people could see. The chat function's not available to everyone,
perfect.
on the public observers, but we will read it out so the public could follow along.
Oh, it's sorry, it's not coming up with the markups when I copy it into there, but bear with me. Perhaps you can read it out while I'm just popping that in there. Just
So essentially, this ISSA applies to all assurance engagement on sustainability information, except when the practitioner is providing a separate conclusion on a greenhouse gas statement in accordance with ISAE 3410.
Okay,
wording's now up there
okay.
in the chat.
I think, Josephine, did you also say maybe at the end?
I did. I kind of threw that in and Claire picked that up. So I will read that
Oh.
again. This ISSA applies to all assurance engagements on sustainability information, comma, except when the practitioner is providing a separate conclusion on a greenhouse gas, GHG in brackets, statement, comma, in which case ISAE 3410 applies, full stop.
So I have a question. Doesn't that create some mutual exclusiveness? So I just want make sure that it's fine. There, it wouldn't exclude the opportunity to apply the standard when they're applying a separate conclusion on 3410. I just don't want to make sure we're reading this the right way.
Then if we
You could have 5,000, an engagement on 5,000 while you're doing another engagement on 3410, right?
yes, you can totally.
Just want to make sure that's how people are reading it.
And we'll explain it, obviously, very clearly in the EM.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get helpful suggestions on improved language. Any comments on this, Julie, since you raised the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the, sorry, still early. I think there's the broader concern I still have, Tom, but I think this assists me and it takes away the focus at least we had on the word engaged, which is helpful.
Okay. Could we move on from this point with this revised language noted for the public record? Okay, any other, I have you, but people who want to talk about any other paragraphs, I think it's 1 through 16, and related application material and appendix are 1, come in. Ada?
Yes, thank you, Tom. And we discussed last Friday also the interplay with sustainability information, the definition, etc. And I'm comfortable with the way it's in here, but I just believe that it would be appropriate that a separate question on this is asked in the EM, and I think that's already planned. But I just wanted to confirm that.
Absolutely, Ada, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments on 1 through 16? Okay, Josephine, we can proceed.
Thank you. Okay, so if we could move on to the next slide, please. And now we're going to walk through the conduct of assurance engagement, acceptance and continuance, fraud, non-compliance, communication and documentation. So you'll find we're looking at paragraphs 16 to 67. Sorry, 17 to 67, we've done that, and application material A33 to A153. Thank you.
Okay, 17 to 67. Okay, I see no hands, Josephine. We can proceed.
Thank you very much. So we could move on to the next slide, please. And we have, we're now talking about the preconditions, the terms of the assurance engagement, evidence and planning. And those are in requirements 68 to 93, paragraph A154 to paragraph A280. But if you would like to just bear with us, we just want to move on to the next slide because we have a matter in relation to paragraph A234. This is one of where we kind of got a little bit enthusiastic and then had to do a reverse. We had unintentionally tied information produced by the entity in A234, as you can see, with other entities within the entity's organizational boundary or value chain. Obviously, information produced by the entity would not include information about the value chain per se. And so in which case we felt that that particular addition probably wasn't appropriate. And we do have information in the application material in other paragraphs that talk about information produced by the entity. So we're not missing anything there. So in some ways it is an editorial, but we did want to bring that to your attention. So that's basically the deletion of the new item that you'll see in the markup under A234. We're deleting information produced by the entity. So if you wouldn't mind, Michelle, moving back again to the previous slide, that would be helpful. Thank you. And now, again, we're going to paragraph 93 and paragraph A280. Thank you, Tom. Over to you.
Okay. Any comments with the deletion in A234 noted? Eric.
Thanks, Tom. I have one comment, and it's on paragraph A263A. And there is a discussion there about materiality and how the practitioner makes judgment about the materiality. And there's one of the questions, one of the paragraphs there, the middle paragraph, middle sentence of that paragraph, I found, which begins, the practitioner's risk procedures are blah, blah, blah. I just found that was a very confusing sentence to add right in the middle of the paragraph, and I felt it was redundant, and I wondered if it might be confusing to readers. And so my suggestion would be to delete that sentence in the middle of that paragraph.
Okay, so you're suggesting, if this is on page 66 and 67 of the application material paper, to delete the second sentence. The third sentence, sorry, the third sentence. The practitioner's risk procedures are designed and performed to identify disclosures when material statements are likely to arise or limited assurance, or to identify and assess risks of material misstatement at the assertion level for disclosures for reasonable assurance. Josephine?
Thank you, Eric. What we were trying to do there, though, we were trying to solve a few problems, including Greg's problem about that sort of two-step that's missing between, you know, the judgments about materiality, how they affect the practitioner's work effort, and also drawing in ISO 320. I think potentially, if we actually remove that, then the last sentence doesn't make sense either, because the judgments about materiality are relevant to the practitioner's approach, which we're talking about in the previous sentence. So if we do that, that would mean going back and having to redraft the whole thing, which we're not really at that point. So we either leave it and see what we get back from that, or we would have to delete it. And I think that might not work for other board members. So Tom, back to you on that one.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Josephine. Eric, any reaction to Josephine's reply?
I'm happy to wait and see what we get back. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep it as is. Any other comments on this section? Okay, we can proceed.
Thank you, Michelle. If you would mind moving to the next slide. Okay, so now we're in the risk procedures and responding to risk of material misstatement. So the clarification, the requirements here are 94L to 135, and the related application material here is A281 to A390. And over to you there, Tom. Thank you.
A 94L to 135. Eric?
Thanks, Tom. My comment is on paragraph A385DR. And I'm suggesting we delete that paragraph. I was not really convinced that this added any value to the standard. It seemed to basically repeat what's in the requirement. So I just was struggling with what the purpose of it was. So I think it's redundant myself. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Eric, thank you. That's fine. And let's get the board's view on that. What we were trying to do was address that issue that was coming across, that potentially there were concerns that the practitioner is giving assurance on the outcome of the forward-looking information. And obviously that's not the case. So we were just trying to clarify that ultimately the work is about that the information is performed in accordance with the criteria that addresses the method, assumptions and data used. So that's why we included it. But if board members are comfortable with that being clear enough in the requirements, then I'm happy to delete that. But obviously we'll need to hear from others, Tom. Thank you.
So if anyone objects to its deletion, please speak up. You don't have to raise your hand right now. So we're going to delete A385DR. Julie?
My comment isn't on that paragraph. Do you want to hold off?
We're up to a new point. We agreed to delete it.
Okay. Sorry, my comment is on paragraph 116 in both L and R, and we've introduced some introductory words there. I think the simple fix is just to delete the additional words that says in designing and performing further procedures, because I believe you're in the overall procedures section now. And these are conditional requirements for if certain circumstances apply, you need to design and implement overall responses. So I just tripped over the intro words there about in designing and performing further procedures and wondered if we really needed that as a lead into both of those paragraphs. We could just revert out what was changed.
Okay, just the introductory. You're fine with that. You're fine with a new C. Josephine, reaction?
Yes, actually, now that you say that, that's right. It's further audit procedures has an implication. So yes, it does. It doesn't make quite good sense. We put it in response to an offline comment. So as long as others are happy, I'm happy to take that out. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposal is to delete what was changed on 116L and 116R, just the lead-in phrase in designing and performing further procedures, comma. That would be deleted, and then it would just begin the practitioner on both L and R. Anyone object to that? Okay, we'll move on to the next comment. Chun-Wei?
Thanks, Tom. Just on 133R, and apologies if I couldn't remember the discussion around this. Why did we shift what was an A down to C? So this is obtained evidence from events occurring up to the date of practitioner's report. I thought that is a sensible kind of starting point. I know there is one or more of the following, and the sequence maybe doesn't really matter, but I thought this is a sensible starting point, consistent with 540, if I'm not mistaken. So just want to understand the shift.
Josephine?
It was simply to, I guess it's almost like a hopper scenario. It was suggested by a couple of board comments that it should be moved to the end because it's probably a less common approach for obtaining evidence about estimates and forward-looking information in the sustainability assurance engagement world. And so that's why it's de-emphasized from that perspective, and the focus is on those particular steps that are more likely in this scenario.
So it's a relevance point. Okay. Chudley, you can live with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we go on to the next section.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we have now various different bits and pieces, misstatements, evaluating the description of the criteria, subsequent event, written representations, other information, forming the conclusion, and reporting. The paragraphs in particular in the requirements are 136 to 187. And then we also have A391 to A518. But there's a couple of matters here that I do want to raise with the board before we go to general comments, please. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just moving to the next slide for me, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so we had deleted the reference in paragraph 169G1 and the related application material because it was considered unclear, and it could in some ways imply that the practitioner is responsible for the criteria and for materiality. And so we deleted it, but in fact it's actually quite important because there will be cases where the applicable criteria will define or describe materiality in a different way. And so we do need to make sure that the practitioner raises this point with the users. However, the wording was there was too much emphasis on the practitioner and the practitioner's decision in the wording. And so what we did, we have made it a conditional requirement, and so that if materiality is defined or described differently in the applicable criteria to how misstatements are described in the practitioner's report, then you would include such a definition or description. And we felt that that was actually quite an important point for the practitioner to raise with users. And so we have reinstated but made a slight change to 169G1b. So it would be useful to have comments on that. But before we move on to that one, actually, Tom, probably best to deal with that one first, given that it's a change, if you wouldn't mind, and then we can move on to the next point, and then we'll go back to the general comments.
Okay. So we're dealing with 169G2 and application material. Is that 480? I'm looking at my small screen. Eric.
Thanks, Tom. And I think this was one of the original deletion, I think, was a suggestion that came from me, and I just wanted to respond to this. And you know, I understand the importance of making reference to materiality when it's described in the applicable criteria, and that's very consistent with other standards. I think the thing that perplexed me about this addition was I think users will be confused if they're only presented with what the applicable criteria have indicated as materiality, if the practitioner does not explain how they have used that definition and that applicable criteria in determining the materiality that's been used as part of the engagement. So I didn't find the application material was explaining to the practitioner why they would be saying this and how they would deal with it. And there are no examples in our illustrative examples to show a situation similar to this. So I was concerned about putting something in that in a sustainability context could be very complex to explain. My preference had been to leave the material out, but wait for comments on exposure, and then determine what the nature of the requirement and application material would be appropriate in this circumstance. So that was the reason why I had originally suggested removing it. And I'm not, while this is better than it was, to me it's still problematic. It will be problematic to be clear in practice. Thank you.
Josephine?
Just to be clear, Eric, the or is not a therefore you wouldn't do little to little a, because it's our wonderful technical and or. So but it can't be and, because B might not necessarily be the situation. So that's the best way that we can dealing with it now. And also, if we do take it out, we are now inconsistent with 3,000. So Tom, and I know you understand that, Eric. So Tom, to that point, I wouldn't mind others' views on this, whether we go with the wording that we're presenting here for consistency and to respond to a comment, or whether we revert back to what the board can see in agenda item 2D, paragraph G. Thank you.
Okay, any further reactions, Ada?
Thank you, Tom. I'd be comfortable with leaving it in and to keep the alignment with 3,000. I certainly don't mind if attention is being raised to the issue in the explanatory memorandum, and I think that would actually be a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, do other people feel similarly? See nodding of heads of the people on my screen. Eric, to your stance, if we draw attention to this, it doesn't seem like it rises to a fatal flaw. You in your comments said it will elicit comments regardless. So, okay, I think we'll stick with, if you don't object to what's on the slide.
Yeah, let's go forward.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Josephine?
Thank you, Eric. Michelle, if you would mind moving to the next slide. We had three points that came through on this, and apologies, we just missed it, and so actually to some extent we could have made that amendment earlier, but it's a minor point, and the cross-referencing isn't right. And so Sachiko reminded us, as did Wolf and Eric, that we need to clarify that. And so this is our proposal. We're removing from the center of 175B the words however, which is the ones, as I say, that are proving difficulty. However, reference to law and regulation in paragraph 169D(4) shall be read as reference to the other assurance standards. And we felt by removing that reference, it's actually much clearer now without that centerpiece. So if I could receive comments from the board, please, if they're happy for us to go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking more closely at the slide myself. So we're looking to this deletion in 175B. Allow people a moment to read the slide. Any objections to the deletions, Sachiko?
Actually, no objection. That is really responsive to my comments. So, Josephine, thank you very much. But my little comment is with regard to the last sentence. We say the assurance report shall thereby identify such other assurance standards. And maybe we have this thereby because of having the second sentence. So I just wonder maybe if we delete the second sentence, we also need to delete the word thereby. Maybe it's just a nuance, but just a thought.
Thank you, Sachiko. Yes, we can do that. Thank you.
So for the record, the final sentence will then read, the assurance report shall identify such other assurance standards, including the jurisdiction of origin of the other assurance standards.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, noted for the record, no objections.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sachiko. So, Michelle, we're going backwards in time to the previous setup slide, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
And Tom, if we have any other comments, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for the task force to moving the paragraph that about the level of assurance up in the basis for conclusion. And I think that's better. So thank you for that. I still would like a question to be asked about the prominence of the distinction between reasonable and limited assurance as it comes to the auditor's the report, practitioner's report. So just wanted to ask whether that is still the plan or whether the plan would have been, well, we've moved it up, there's no reason for the question anymore.
Ado, as promised on Friday, we will raise a question on this point. I mean, we have to anyway, because we're making a change to the current structure and layout of our reports. So okay. We would have to draw attention to it. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, any other comments on this section? Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. If we could have the next slide, please. And then now we're in agenda item G, which has been updated. And so, Tom, I'm asking for any comments on agenda item G.
Okay, comments on agenda item G. Eric.
Just going back to the first discussion about 3410, Josephine, I'm not sure, but you might want to, there may need to be a word changed in that conforming amendment.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, we will do that. Thank you.
Okay, so that comment was just to look at the consistency for the conforming amendment with the slight amendment we made in 1A. Okay, that's viewed as an editorial in my mind, so the team could do that in preparation for publication. People agree? Yeah. Okay. Josephine, next.
Next, please.
We know who we are. Now you can follow.
Surprise. So just to say a huge thanks to the board for all their comments. We really did appreciate it. We've obviously made quite a few changes, and I'm glad to see that you're happy with where we've landed. And so at that point, I'm going to now again thank the task force again for all their hard work, and hand back over to you, Tom, for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Josephine, the task force, the staff, the board, for your comments, for all the hard work and late nights and early mornings that have gone into getting to this point right now. Before the real moment of truth, I wanted to invite Jim Dowkin to share any reflections before we go to a vote.
Thanks, Tom. And I think we've landed, the board's landed in a good spot. I also think through some conversations with the CAG that previously that the CAG really wanted to see an exposure draft out there to see what the comments were. And I think this will be a step in that direction. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Michael Hafman from the PIOB.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to see such rapid progress over a short period of time since the meeting wrapped up last week. So excellent work by the task force and the staff and other drafters. I think they've gotten to an excellent point here for exposure. Some good questions identified to pose in the explanatory memorandum. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of comments that come back on this. I'm looking forward to the discussion in the executive session on the outreach plan, because outreach is going to be very important to get feedback from practitioners and others, some of whom are not accustomed to responding to IAASB exposures. And so that will be key to do that, but a great step along the way.
Thank you, Michael. So I have, before we go to vote, and just to be clear on what we will be voting for is the exposure draft as laid out in these paper plus the consequential amendments. I think we need to turn it over to Billy to give us a little bit of an assessment on any due process elements that the board needs to consider.
Thank you, Tom. So before the vote, just to cover off on the due process matters, this was laid out in the issues paper as well in agenda item 2. But I will just proceed to state that in view of the Sustainability Assurance Task Force, the significant matters identified as a result of deliberations since the beginning of this project have been presented in the issues papers for IAASB discussion. In view of the Sustainability Assurance Task Force, there are no significant matters that have not been brought to the attention of the IAASB. In addition, the Sustainability Task Force also considered the background and introduction that informed the project as outlined in the approved project proposal, as well as the approach that has been adopted to the development of ISA 5000 in terms of leveraging existing IAASB standards and guidance. In addition, the task force also considered that targeted outreach with key stakeholders has been undertaken throughout the project, and we are in the process of finalizing a comprehensive global outreach plan for during the consultation period. Based on these considerations, the Sustainability Task Force therefore believes that a consultation paper or field testing is not needed at this stage of the project. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Billy. So before we go to vote, I have to ask if anyone has any objections to the board voting on the ISSA 5000 exposure draft that relates to sustainability assurance engagements, or if anyone is unclear on what we will be voting on, which includes the conforming consequential amendments. Any uncertainty on that? Okay, so we're going to do it in this following way. I'm going to ask if anyone wishes to dissent, then abstain, and then support the issuance of the exposure draft. So the first question I will is, anyone wish to dissent against the issuance of this exposure draft? I see no hands raised, so dissent has 0. Anyone wish to abstain to the exposure draft? I see no abstentions, so abstain has 0. Could I ask for a show of hands, digital and physical, so I could see it on the screen, for those who wish to support the issuance of the exposure draft? let the record show that we have a unanimous support for the exposure draft, 18 votes. And I'm sure Josephine and the task force are have a sigh of relief right now. And so just congratulate Josephine, the sustainability task force, the staff involved, Dan, Claire, Fadi, Adriana, TK, the drafting team, Jamie, Joanna, and Susan, and anyone and everyone who's been involved in this project. Our reference groups, I should also note, have had a huge role on this as well. Our CAG, and this has been, we may not be using the term an army anymore, but a cast of hundreds of people who've had extraordinary input on this. So really congratulations to the team. Josephine, I think it would be only fair to allow you to say something right now. And the other person I really do want to congratulate too is Lynn Provost, who had a big role in getting this off the ground. And I think Natalie deserves some mention here too. So great work by all. Josephine?
Yeah, thank you. And of course, Diane, because Diane took us all the way to December, which actually wasn't that long ago. But I think this has just been such a success of the board and the team to meet these deadlines, which are so critically important. We do really need that standard out there on a timely basis. So wonderful work from everybody and the board. Everyone's been pulling together to get this to this point, and we're really happy with where it is. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Josephine. One thing I should note that the hard work is really just beginning. The consultation phase is about to get going. We have probably a few weeks before the ED is in final with the explanatory memorandum, since we've added a lot of topics to put into the explanatory memorandum. But the first thing we as a board could do, and everyone on the call, is help promote the decisions that were made today. We will be posting notices on our social platforms and on our website. Please use your voices on those platforms to amplify our news, and that will get people prepared to participate in the comment process. We will be talking, as I said, more comprehensively about an outreach plan, which will be very broad and wide in our executive session, because that is an administrative item, but it will be apparent to all soon enough that it will be very inclusive in our approach. I just will pause here to reflect on this milestone and allow anyone else who wants to share reflections to come in. If not, we're going to bring the meeting to its close. Okay, I think everyone's worked hard enough and probably is ready to bring the public session to a close. So most of all, I know we did it in person on Friday, but it's never too much. Thank you to all who made this board meeting possible, board members, TAs, observers, staff, for all your contributions. Thank you to the staff for their significant effort to prepare the materials and making sure the arrangements of the meeting. Michelle, I didn't highlight all of her work last week. She's diligently on the call first thing this morning. And Michelle, thank you. And Yanza and all the team at IFAC too that goes to support us from a facilities standpoint as well. So thank you to that. Michael Haifman, it's been sort of an elongated board week, but I don't know if you'd like to share any general observations from the meeting.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Well, in general, the meeting was very productive. So a lot's accomplished on several projects. So good to see that progress made. And also, overall, the way that the agenda was shuffled from time to time to make good use of the time available, and provide time for the task forces to do their work on drafting changes was good as well. I think that added to the productivity of the session, and great to see active input by the board into the discussions throughout the week. So thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Michael. Jim, any broader observations you'd like to share?
Thanks, Tom. I think I communicated my observation at the end of the meeting last week, but certainly I know the CAG has been very consistent in asking for the sustainability standard, and so I appreciate that the board has been able to get an exposure draft out. So I think the meeting was very productive from that point of view.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so I'm sure everyone is now wondering, when will those minutes be sent out from this, because they want to figure out a way to relive all of our successes over the last week. Well, they'll be distributed in due course. We're doing it much more quickly, and we'll approve them at the September board meeting. Let's just remind you that we have an upcoming call on July 26th. That meeting will be 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern summer daylight time, and it will be used to talk about our favorite part 10 of the proposed LCE standard. The next quarterly meeting will occur on the week of September 18th. As discussed last week, we intend that to be a Monday to Thursday 4-day meeting. We'll talk a little bit about some of our ideas for that meeting and December during our executive session. Just a reminder, Jim was on the just talk, so remind you that our CAG meeting is for IAASB and us is September 11th and 13th. The staff will be in touch with you if you're on duty for that. It will be the last CAG session in the current form. So we look forward to that session and celebrating the contributions of our current CAG members. We expect our board papers posting for September to begin the final week of August, and it should all be posted by September 1st. So with all that, I'm going to bring the public session of the meeting to a close. I suggest that we reconvene at 15 minutes after the hour, and then we will go into executive session. Michelle, could you turn off the camera? I mean, the broadcast on YouTube, and we will reconvene in 15 minutes. But finally,